One significant issue that research students and beginning researchers face is the lack of academic vocabulary. So, what is academic vocabulary? Why is it important for beginning researchers or researchers in general to develop academic vocabulary? And what is the general process of developing academic vocabulary? These are questions that we will briefly respond to in this presentation. So first, what is academic vocabulary? Generally, academic vocabulary is a specialized form of vocabulary that encompasses words and phrases that are used in various academic disciplines. Generally, academic vocabulary is used in research theses, research papers, reports, textbooks, lectures, and other academic material. What are then the characteristics of academic vocabulary, or we can say, what is it that differentiates between academic vocabulary and general vocabulary? So, generally, although precision is important in all types of vocabulary, because our basic concern in the use of language, in the use of vocabulary, is to get our messages precisely and concisely. But in terms of academic vocabulary, it is highly important that the academic vocabulary should have precision, and it should have formality, and it should be specific in terms of the discipline in which we are actually making use of academic vocabulary. So these are important characteristics of academic vocabulary. Now, the why of it. Why is it important for researchers, for academic writers, especially for beginning writers, to develop academic vocabularies? The first one is that generally, academic vocabulary is used in academic, scientific, and educational contexts. And so, without adequate academic vocabulary or expertise or access to adequate academic vocabulary, what will be the issue? The issue will be that the beginning researchers will not be able to make good use of or to present academic and scientific educational writing in a precise manner. So precision and clarity in communication. Again, when we use specialized vocabulary, academic vocabulary, the result is that the communication that we aim at is more precise and clear. And so there is less ambiguity. Thirdly, uniformity of message or meaning. Generally, academic vocabulary is kind of brings in uniformity into our message or meaning throughout our reading, throughout our writing, or spoken communication in academic context. So uniformity is another important thing because of which we need to have access to good academic vocabulary. And so, for example, in a particular thesis or in a particular text or a research report, we need to make use of specific terms or words in a uniform manner. And so for that reason, we need to have access to particular academic vocabulary in that context. Next, academic vocabulary gives us access to scholarly reading and writing. So researchers or academics who have command of the academic vocabulary, the special vocabulary in the particular scientific fields or academic fields, they will have access to the scholarly reading and writing in those particular academic fields, in terms of comprehension, in terms of understanding the nuances of the field. Next, formal contextualized communication. Academic vocabulary is important because it helps us in communicating in formal contexts and in communicating in the contexts of particular subject areas or fields. So the communication is contextualized particularized and specified when we have access to good academic vocabulary. So these are some of the reasons for having good command of academic vocabulary. Now, the most important question is, how is it that we as beginning researchers, junior researchers can develop our academic vocabulary? So here are certain things which is like quite common sense kind of strategies that can help us in developing our academic vocabulary. So the first one, which is not rocket science, is reading extensively and intensively. So in order to develop good academic vocabulary, we need to read extensively in the fields in which we are actually working, and also intensively in detail, so going into the specific context in which particular words or vocabulary is used, or the variety of contexts in which particular words are used. That intensive reading will help you us in that kind of situations. So both extensive and intensive reading is important. Extensive reading gives us a range of vocabulary, adds to our vocabulary, and intensive reading actually gives us in-depth understanding of the particular vocabulary or words that we are making use of or frequent use of. Then thirdly, getting involved in academic communication, both in written form and in oral form, is very important. So the more we are involved in academic communication, in academic contexts, in reading and writing, in speaking in academic contexts such as in conferences or seminars, the more we have the chances to develop our academic vocabulary. So getting immersed in academia will help us in developing our academic communication and academic vocabulary. Next, making use of dictionaries, thesauruses, and technology in the modern world, the internet, the online dictionaries, the online resources, encyclopedias, can help us develop our academic vocabulary. Next, making frequent use of vocabulary, both in written and in oral form. So the more we practice the use of academic words in particular context situations, the better we will have the ability to develop and to enhance our academic vocabulary. The next thing is, we can also develop our academic vocabulary by developing and keeping vocabulary journals, especially as beginning researchers when we are new in the field and we still need to have further exposure to the field. We need to keep journals so that we can keep the context and the meanings of the particular words and vocabulary that we are using in our field. Lastly, and most importantly, persistence is always important in all sorts of academic pursuits, including in terms of developing ourselves, in terms of enriching our academic vocabulary and our academic understanding. So persistently reading, persistently writing in academic contexts, making revisions, bringing in better vocabulary, and revising and revising again and getting feedback. And persistently doing this. So as we know that practice makes people perfect. The same is the case with persistence in terms of learning academic vocabulary and adding to our academic reading and writing expertise and skills. So these are some of the ways in which we can actually develop our academic vocabulary. Lastly, we need to remember that learning the use of academic vocabulary, the proper use of academic vocabulary, is a kind of long-term effort, and so we need to be patient, and we need to be passionate about developing our academic vocabulary. It takes time. It takes a lot of reading and writing. It needs a lot of reflection. it needs a lot of practice, and it also needs a lot of discussion and communication with people who are experts in the field of academia and